What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 5 running back breakouts for the 2021 fantasy football season. So make sure to tune in. And if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? Who else would you put in this category, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you could want at a great value. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into it. You can see we have got our master sheet of running back rankings along with their ADPs pulled up. Again, a quick note, this is based on PPR scoring, so keep that in mind. But with that being said, we are going to kick this thing off with the number 12 running back here on the list. That is Antonio Gibson. And look, I know what you're going to say. Antonio Gibson is an early second round selection, mid-second round selection at worst. He's ranked as a top 12 running back. Does he really qualify for this list? And I would say from the perspective of the upside you are getting in Gibson as a, potential top 5 running back and a potential breakout that can transition into a high-end running back, then yeah, it is worth it, because this is what happened last season. Antonio Gibson kind of was thrust into fantasy relevance after a couple of injuries, some releases with other Washington running backs, and Gibson didn't disappoint. He did get a little bit nicked up towards the end of the year, but other than that, he was really, really good. And he was a guy that coming out of college had more experience as a wide receiver. So there were a lot of question marks, but he excelled in the running back role. And with the experience as a wide receiver, well, he's somebody also that will excel in catching the football. And look, to some extent, I am basing my hopes with Antonio Gibson, the best case scenario, with what we're hearing coming out of camp, and specifically from one Ron Rivera, obviously the head coach in Washington. And he said it last season. He's saying it this offseason multiple times. He wants to use Antonio Gibson like he used Christian McCaffrey in Carolina. He sees a lot of McCaffrey in Antonio Gibson. And that has to be music to the ears of fantasy football players, because obviously we all know who the number 1 running back in fantasy football is. It's Christian McCaffrey. And across all platforms, pretty much across all rankings, it is him. And anytime you get a head coach saying, I envision my guy being the next version of McCaffrey, especially when that was the coach that brought McCaffrey into the NFL, then you kind of take attention and you label Antonio Gibson as a potential league winner. Now, it's not only that. We saw it last season. Antonio Gibson, with the opportunities he was given, he was succeeding. He's a good pass catcher. He's in an offense that right now, man, completely revamped. With Ryan Fitzpatrick there, I think that offense gets a much higher upside in terms of scoring. Yes, the one thing I will say, I don't see the type of volume for Gibson as McCaffrey in terms of pass catching, because McCaffrey's never been surrounded with as many weapons as Washington has, with a Terry McLaurin, with a Curtis Samuel, with a Logan Thomas, with a J.D. McKissick, with a Humphreys, who's familiar with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So a lot of options there. But I do think Gibson could very well be in the top 5 running backs in terms of pass catching volume, targets, receptions, or right outside of it. And that's going to translate to a lot of success in PPR. Like, I'd have him ranked higher than a Najee Harris for sure. Probably ranked higher than a Nick Chubb in full point PPR. He'd be very close with a Jonathan Taylor. Probably at this point in time, safer than a Saquon Barkley. That's why I kind of want to bring him up. I see a lot of upside for this Washington offense, and I'm buying into it. And I think the best, fantasy player on this offense is going to be Gibson at the most important position. So he's somebody that I'm trying to land in a lot of different formats in the second round. If I can get him in the middle of the second round, I am absolutely ecstatic, because I think he has got round one value. But let's move on here. Not too far down, though, in Clyde EdwardsHelaire coming down to the 14th spot. And I briefly want to say this. Look, a couple of months ago, Clyde EdwardsHelaire was much, much lower on this list. But thankfully, the fantasy community, look, they kind of just looked around and said, oh, why in the hell do we have CH ranked this low? And this was something I was screaming from the rooftops months ago. And I was saying Clyde EdwardsHelaire at that point in time was going as a third round selection. He was the primary case of recency bias negatively impacting your thought process because CH is on a great offense. The competition that was there last season, Le'Veon Bell, even Damian Williams, who sat out the year, all those guys are gone, so he is the clear number one guy. He was a little bit banged up last season, struggled to get in the end zone, but again, there's probably going to be positive touchdown regression here with Clyde EdwardsHelaire. We always talk about, negative touchdown regression, but with him, it's probably going to go the other way. He's on one of the best offenses in the NFL. Andy Reid invests in his running backs, and the Chiefs made Clyde EdwardsHelaire the top running back last season, selected for a reason, and I think it's going to translate to success offensively for him. He's going to have a lot more opportunities. He excels as a pass catcher, and while you can't get him in the third round anymore, and while that hurts, I'm happy to see him more accurately ranked. I would be drafting him, again, probably in the beginning of the second round, especially in PPR scoring. I think he's safer than a Joe Mixon. He's safer than a Najee Harris. You could, again, make even the argument. In the first two rounds, the name of the game is avoiding risk. Saquon Barkley, Clyde EdwardsHelaire. I know Saquon Barkley is like a top 2, top 3 running back when healthy, but he's coming off an ACL, folks. That's not easy to bounce back from just like that. So I do want to point out Clyde EdwardsHelaire. If he falls to you at the end of the second round, beginning of the third round, don't even think about it. I really do believe that, the down year that CEH had last season was more circumstance, not really his fault. The volume dropped off heavily when Le'Veon Bell came. I don't think it's going to be like that this season. I think it's going to be much more consistent. And I think we're going to see from CEH kind of what we expected last year when he was a top 5, top 6 selection. And you're going to get that value back just a year later. But again, let's move on here to our number 3 guy. And now we scroll much, much lower in Darrell Henderson. So Henderson is a very, very intriguing case. And we said once Cam Akers went down with the Achilles, let's wait a little bit. Let's, have a couple weeks pass until we make a judgment on Darrell Henderson. And the reason for that was obviously, will the Rams add any more running backs? The definitive answer to that question, nope. So it's Darrell Henderson's show. And right now, in terms of his ADP, you're seeing him go anywhere between the end of the third round to middle of the fourth round. I think that's kind of, the expected ADP. And you potentially getting, an RB1 for the team, not potentially, but definitely an RB1 in the beginning of the fourth round. Somebody that he won't be the 100% one-to-one Cam Akers replacement, but Akers was being drafted at the end of the first round. I think Darrell Henderson has high-end RB2 upside. If I can get that at the beginning of the fourth round, especially with how slim the running back situation is after the first 2.5, 3 rounds, I'd be absolutely ecstatic. Like, I look at the guys that are ranked above him, I'd have him 100% above Kareem Hunt, 10,000% ahead of Travis Etienne, above Sanders, above Jacobs. So Darrell Henderson is somebody that I really, really like. I think he's on a Rams offense that is the best, the highest upside in terms of scoring that it's ever been, with Matthew Stafford now at the ship. And I think Henderson is going to see a lot of scoring opportunities. That defense is also one that is exceptional, one of the best in the NFL. And if the Rams decide, look, we know what we have in Matthew Stafford, we kind of want to keep him fresh for a potential playoff run, kind of like how we saw the Bucs do with a Tom Brady. You know who's going to shoulder a big portion of that offensive load? It'll be Darrell Henderson. It'll be, the Rams giving him the football and saying, look, just make things easier for our stud quarterback in Stafford, the one we invested so much in, and keep him fresh for the playoffs. You just do your thing. You get the volume. You get like 20 carries a game, if not more. You be there as a pass-catching running back as well. And I think Darrell Henderson, that translates to a top 15 type of season, like barely outside of that worst case scenario. And again, I think that's very, very valuable. The offensive line isn't too bad there for the Rams. Short term, for 2021 while Akers is out, I really do like Darrell Henderson and the upside there. So let's move on now to our next guy. And here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and highlight one Zack Moss. So Zack Moss is probably a very divisive name because Devin Singletary is still with the Buffalo Bills, and it seems like the Bills invest in a new running back like every single year. And if you decide to follow the latest trend, last year it was Moss, the year before that Singletary, the guy that scores the most rushing touchdowns is always the quarterback, Josh Allen. So you do have that to worry about, but why people like the upside for Zack Moss is the Bills, they want to find a running back that can take pressure off Josh Allen. They want to find their Clyde EdwardsHelaire. They want to find that guy that can finally give them a rushing attack where their quarterback doesn't have to take as many hits, where he's not a guy that's rushing for 500 yards and like double-digit touchdowns. They don't want him on those quarterback sneaks. We've seen quarterbacks get hurt way too often on those plays. Hell, we've seen it with Patrick Mahomes. And right now, Zack Moss, if you're keeping up with the Bills and that running back competition, well, it's one where Moss, the chatter is, he's got a leg up on Devin Singletary. Now, I know that can change in the blink of an eye if there's an injury, if there's something like that, and, a hot hand approach, because this thing probably starts off 60-40, best case scenario in terms of splits, or maybe 50-50. But I do believe Zack Moss has more touchdown upside than Devin Singletary. And when it's this close, that could be a deciding factor in terms of who you want to go with as the running back to own in that backfield. And I do believe, once the Bills see it from one of these guys, they're going to give him every single opportunity, because that's really, if you think about it, the only thing missing from that offense. You add that, they become absolutely elite on another level, like close to the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's something that I really, really like. Sean McDermott, the head coach for the Bills, he's seen firsthand what having a stud running back on the team while he was in Carolina can do as their defensive coordinator. So one of these guys will be given an opportunity. Yes, it's a coin flip of a situation, so kind of high risk, high reward. But when you look at where his ADP is, like 35th overall running back, 94th overall player, that's close to the 10th round, maybe a round and a half too earlier. So you're still looking like at the 8th round, but potentially getting that type of value that late, it kind of eliminates the risk. So low risk, high reward. If there's any running back for the Buffalo Bills that I'm going to take a chance on, it would be Zack Moss at this point in time. So for that reason, I give him the edge. And if one of these guys, again, gets injured, something like that, the other will absolutely be a league winner. And I think the Bills, even without an injury, they're going to turn it over to whoever is doing best. Right now, it seems to be Zack Moss. He has the edge. So for that reason, Zack Moss is kind of the guy that we are believing in here. And then lastly, let's get to one Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones was somebody that I was mentioning as a steal at the running back position. Obviously, you can see why with where his value is. 37th overall in terms of running backs, 97th overall in terms of players. But I'll say it again with Ronald Jones. If there's one running back to own for the Tampa Bay Bucks, it is Ronald Jones. And you're going to say, okay, in PPR scoring, he's not somebody that I have ranked all that high. Okay, I can respect that. I understand why, because he's not going to contribute as a pass catcher. You've got Leonard Fournette and Giovanni Bernard. So forget about Ronald Jones as a safe floor guy, but somebody, look, you get him in the 9th round, which very, very possible, again, depending on the size of your league. He's got 1,000+ yard rushing upside. He's going to be somebody that we saw it last season. The Bucs don't want Tom Brady to go out there and throw it for a bunch of yards. They want to keep him fresh for the playoffs. That's how they're going to maximize their chance for another Super Bowl run. And, Brady's best friend, it's going to be Ronald Jones. I think that especially in standard scoring leagues, I'll flip to that format here for a brief second. Ronald Jones is somebody that, as an RB2, not all that bad. I think he lands like in the Damian Harris conversation, in the Melvin Gordon situation, Raheem Mostert, James Robinson type of situation, because with James Robinson, he's got Travis Etienne to take away pass catching work. So, okay, which offense do you have more trust in terms of scoring more points? Definitely the Bucs with all the weapons they have. Better defense as well, so translates to more scoring opportunities for the offense from that perspective. Like, I look at this list and I say there's a lot of running backs that I would have Ronald Jones comfortably ahead of or right at that level. Like, I'd definitely have him above Leonard Fournette. I'd have him above Melvin Gordon, above Raheem Mostert, right on the level of James Robinson. And if you take that into consideration, that's almost a top 25 type of running back. I think the breakout is there. If you're looking for the breakout to finally happen, we saw little glimpses of it last season. There were games where Ronald Jones was great, and it was for a stretch of like 3, 4, 5 weeks. He was doing very, very well. Then he kind of got nicked up. And unfortunately, that kind of hurt his stock a little bit. Leonard Fournette played well in that absence. But overall, I think Ronald Jones is the best running back that the Tampa Bay Bucs have. What they care about here is having a guy that can be the bell cow. And to me, that is 1,000% Ronald Jones. He'd be the guy for the Bucs that I take a chance on. Considering his draft price, it's really not all that big of a chance or a risk to take on. So he concludes our list here in terms of the top 5 running back breakouts for the 2021 season. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and again, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. While you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.